Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of Two Cooks Talking. I am your host, Nguyen. I'm not an expert on cooking, but I do enjoy food. With me, as always, is my co host, executive chef Michael Weller, who is an expert on cooking.
Well, I certainly love food.
Yeah. Okay. We are filming this, taping this in advance, but if I have this timed out correctly, tomorrow will be Thanksgiving. So I figure what a better episode to cover than Thanksgiving foods.
Hallelujah. I love the holiday. It's a great feast.
Oh yeah, we do. I was looking at our analytics, and we do have some international listeners. But we're talking about the American Thanksgiving held on was it the fourth Thursday of every November?
Third or fourth Thursday of November, yeah.
Yeah. And what I identify it as a time of togetherness of family and kind of breaking bread together and just enjoying each other's time.
And gratitude.
Yep.
Shared food and gratitude. That's really a hard combination
Oh
to
yeah.
beat
Yeah.
right there.
First things off, are you a lunchtime Thanksgiving guy or are you a Thanksgiving dinner person?
Thanksgiving dinner,
Mhm.
early dinner, not anything late,
Okay.
but generally during the course of the day, it's football and cooking. And so yeah, my family tradition is early dinner.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a dinner person. I've had some years where I did the lunchtime Thanksgiving, which is still pretty great because you have that nap afterwards, and you can have some leftovers when you wake up.
It's really anytime you have a chance to eat and then go back to sleep, that's really hard to beat.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we'll start off with the main course, the big what everyone thinks of Thanksgiving is the turkey. Um, I'm a fan of the dark meat. That's where I really appreciate. But before we dive into that, you have a wide variety of ways you can cook the turkey. I know my personal favorite way is to deep fry it. I've never deep fried it myself, but tasting a comparison of different methods, I like deep fried turkeys. I think they come out the best.
I love deep fried turkey. I've done many deep fried turkeys.
Mhm.
I think adding to the whole process of a deep fried turkey is an element of real danger.
Oh yeah,
I mean, you're dropping a 20-pound bird into 375-degree oil.
yeah.
That's the very first time I ever did it. I did it in a commercial kitchen, and did not account for the amount of oil that would
The
spray
splash.
out of the top. I didn't displace any when I dropped the turkey in, but as it cooks, it boils and
It
steams and
pops and
pops,
yeah.
and it was a full-time job for the whole kitchen crew to just clean up the oil that was being thrown out the top of the pot. That being said, I mean, deep fried and it's worth it. It's delicious.
Yeah.
It's not what I typically do for Thanksgiving because the easiest and safest way to do a deep fried turkey is outside.
Right.
And even in amazing California, end of November is not an ideal outside time.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of deep fried turkeys in the summer, and I prefer doing it as an outdoor activity.
Hmm.
I don't think I've ever deep fried a Thanksgiving turkey.
Okay. Yeah, I've had a few. And for anyone that wants to really see something cool, Alton Brown does this great deep fried turkey where he creates a pulley system using a ladder, and it's an amazing thing to watch. But yeah, I think deep frying achieves a lot of my favorite parts about the turkey. It cooks it very well, and you get the crispiest crispy skin you can imagine just from the virtue of it just being deep fried fat and oil, just covering the whole thing.
And typically, the breast meat doesn't dry out quite as much,
Hmm.
and you cook the thigh meat enough to be tender.
Right.
So that's one of the big problems. I mean, turkey is a beautiful bird. I'm glad we have a feast tradition built around a turkey. I think it's a very flavorful and underused bird.
Hmm.
Ben Franklin wanted the turkey to be our national bird.
Oh, really?
I'm glad he didn't pick it because then it'd make it a little odd to eat it every year. But turkeys are beautiful
Yeah.
and delicious. But the challenge is always on a bird that has white meat and dark meat
Hmm.
and salmonella. So
Yeah.
there's a requirement to cook it high and hot enough internal temperature to be safe.
And it's a massive bird to do that.
Challenges all over.
Yeah. So what do you prefer, the white meat or the dark meat?
I prefer eating the dark meat.
Uh-huh.
I don't know that there's much more impressive than carving the white meat.
That's true. Once you get that knife to the turkey, that's the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna cut right into that breast and get a nice little slice, and it's
Perfect slices coming off a turkey breast. That for the show and the ceremony of the theater of the whole production is very hard to beat. So
okay. Um, the next thing I want to talk about is I don't want to speak for you, Mike, but I think you have kind of the same stance as I do on this. But just say no to stuffing. Does that sound
okay,
about right?
that's hard.
Yeah.
You, I I've fed thousands of people on Thanksgiving. Right, I was lucky enough to participate in community organized events where we fed thousands on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is dangerous. It's
Yeah.
a bunch of cooks cooking for larger groups than they're used to, and using a bird that is ridden with salmonella, and stuffing increases all of those dangers tremendously.
Right.
But wow, is it delicious?
It's great, but the I think the danger and the caution that you go into it, because the idea is you have to cook the stuffing enough to kill the salmonella, and in turn you overcook the bird.
Right.
And so I think the risk isn't worth it personally.
I wouldn't I would never advise someone to do stuffing that way. I think there are alternatives. This year, at my own Thanksgiving, I'm doing a whole roast turkey without any stuffing in it, and then I'm going to take a second turkey and break it open so it take out the
Butterfly.
backbone and spatchcock.
Yeah, spatchcock. That's right.
Big technical term for playing it open.
Yeah.
By taking out the backbone, I'm going to put that over a pan of dressing, and by baking the turkey over the top of the dressing, the turkey juices will drip in and give that flavor that is so essential to stuffing that we love,
Yeah.
without some of the safety concerns.
There you go. Best of both worlds right there. And spatchcocking cooks it way faster than a traditional roast.
Yes,
It's
yes.
you just end up with a butchered turkey by the time you're done with it.
Spatchcocking is just a wonderful word and a wonderful technique.
Yeah.
Turkey is
Yeah.
just a lot of fun.
What's actually fun I tried to do was I tried the sous vide method of turkey cooking, and that was interesting. I remember giving you the leftover wings because I was like, what am I going to do with the wings? So I gave it to you so you can use it to make a stock with it. And then that was an interesting thing to do because I didn't realize that the legs you had to cook at a higher temperature than the breast do. I assume because you have a lot more collagen and things like that to break down than the breast.
165 degrees is a very safe, government recommended internal temperature for the purposes of killing salmonella. Bring it to an internal temperature of 165 and it's going to be safe. It's going to be over safe.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to advise you do anything else. Every year, radio personalities get on the radio or on TV and they recommend other temperatures. I'm not going to do that. The government says 165, cook it to 165. But 165 degrees isn't enough for the collagen breakdown and the tenderizing that happens in the dark meat. So in a perfect world, you cook the breast to 165 and the thighs to 170, 175 degrees,
Yeah.
which is a trick.
Yeah.
Which is a trick. I'm going to try something for the first time this year. It makes a lot of sense to me, and we'll see how it goes with the whole bird that we do this year. I'm going to ice down the breast. I'm going to put ice packs on the turkey breast. So just for evenness of cooking, one technique is to allow a large piece of protein to come to room temperature before you put it in the oven. I'm going to do that with the turkey, but I'm going to ice down the breasts so they go into the environment 30 degrees colder. And we'll see how long that lasts.
Interesting. Yeah, I know watching. Once again, I refer to Alton Brown a lot, but he's kind of one of my cooking idols. So
He's not a bad reference.
yeah. So one thing that he does is he makes kind of a tinfoil hat for the turkey that just covers the breast. I thought that's another way of doing the same thing
Sure.
as a something to prevent the heat from hitting the breast. Going back to the stuffing a bit. Now we were talking about the food safety concern with stuffing the turkey, but that's not to say you don't put anything in the turkey at all. Lots of aromatics you can put inside the turkey. On your traditional roast, do you plan on putting, stuffing as far as aromatics go, or?
So it's interesting. It makes me happy to cram a couple oranges and some sage leaves and a bunch of thyme,
A whole onion or something.
the whole onion, garlic cloves, all that into the cavity, to not a lot of effect. The fact is, it doesn't do a lot to perfume the bird. It has more of an impact on the gravy you make from the pan juices afterwards. A more powerful technique for getting flavor into the bird is, first of all, brining, either wet or dry brining.
Right.
And second step is to rub a flavored butter under the skin.
Yeah.
So the butter melts into the meat. And I'm going to do that with both turkeys in different variations.
Okay. So what, I think when I think Thanksgiving, I classically think of sage as kind of one of the holiday aromatics. What else do you reach for?
I'm basing my brine on apple this year.
Okay.
So I'm going to go apple sage with one of them and apple rosemary with the other. I think thyme is always one of my favorite herbs to reach for. So yeah, I'll do one of each with an apple base. In the past I've done orange. I love orange and coriander on turkey. I think it's just a flavor combination.
I think
works.
orange and poultry it's a wonderful combination, or citrus in general. Yeah. I think they just go great.
Hard to go wrong.
And then we were talking about stuffing and dressing, just so that people know. Stuffing is what you put inside the bird. Dressing is prepared on the side.
That's technically what it is.
Yeah.
And if you're cooking it outside the bird, you're not stuffing it. It's
Right.
dressing.
Yep.
So,
Okay. So
and it's delicious.
Yep.
I mean, it's a savory bread pudding. It's scrumptious. So
do you use like a cornbread base on that, or?
this year I'm going cornbread.
Okay.
I mean, I've done traditional mixes on onion, celery, white bread, sage. Poultry seasoning available off the shelf is mostly sage.
Okay.
Typically has a couple other aromatics behind it, but it's predominantly sage.
Okay. What other side dishes do you have?
I come from a family. One year there were 4 of us at Thanksgiving, and we did 10 pounds of mashed potatoes. Actually, sorry, there were 6 of us. We did 10 pounds of mashed potatoes.
That's a lot of mashed potatoes.
That was the year we labeled the Great Potato Famine because there wasn't enough mashed potatoes for my family.
Really?
I have a family. My father and my sister traditionally have a single piece of turkey as an excuse for filling the remainder of the plate with mashed potatoes, butter, and then gravy.
Oh wow! So let me try to wrap my head around these mashed potatoes, because when you cook mashed potatoes, they don't lose volume by weight, right? I mean, they kind of gain more just because you're adding water and butter and things like
Butter
that.
and cream, yeah.
So you're starting off with 10 pounds of raw potatoes. You're probably ending up with maybe 15 pounds of.
There was a lot of potatoes. In the potato famine.
So you're
Yes.
looking at about 2 pounds of potato per person.
I've convinced my family we're going to do a Chipotle sweet potato gratin.
I've had your Chipotle sweet potato. It's wonderful.
So as another side, going to go fluffy on the potatoes. That's probably worth an episode in and of itself. The French go really creamy, almost a sauce, smooth and silky and creamy. The other alternative on mashed potatoes is light and fluffy. I think this year we're going to go light and fluffy, but that's a episode on starch in and of itself, and how to affect that.
That's something we can cover in the future. Now you talked about the Chipotle sweet potatoes. I love sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are one of my favorite sides of anything. And help me. I hate people that do the sweet topping sweet potatoes. I don't want a caramelized sweet potato with mushroom, crap on it. I like a savory sweet potato. I think because there's an inherent sweetness in a sweet potato, and because it's pretty healthy in itself, and there's a lot of benefits to eating sweet potatoes, that adding all that sugar and all the other stuff kind of just it kind of ruins it for me. And so I like going the other route. I like your Chipotle sweet potatoes. I like to make a mashed sweet potato with classic mashed potato things. So I put in bacon, I put in you know, green onions, things like that, lots of butter and you know cheese. I make a savory sweet potato. I really like it. Yeah.
You know, it's a whole big world of food.
Yeah.
So there is a tradition coming from the American South
Uh-huh.
of sweet potatoes
Yeah.
being sweet. Um, and the tiny
Candied
little white
yams.
candied yams and little tiny white marshmallows.
Yeah.
And that's not my first choice.
Mm.
But I've eaten them and plowed through them. I know how to make them. I kind of appreciate the sweet role they play
Yeah.
in a feast. Having a sweet food contrasting all the savory makes a lot of sense. Just
And I agree, but I feel like there are alternatives you can do besides ruining the sweet potato.
I love them both ways. When I make them for myself, they're
Yeah.
very seldom sweet, and they never have marshmallows.
Okay, that's
So
great. But I mean, I was talking about alternatives. A lot of people have cranberry sauce on their plate. Are you a turkey and cranberry guy?
I love chutneys.
Oh, okay.
And when you get to it, when you get down to it,
Hmm.
cranberry sauce is a chutney, and not the jelly. I've never been a fan of jellied cranberry
The big loaf that you get out of the can.
with the ridges from the can still intact. That's tradition. And one of the first things I was probably 22 or 23, been away from home, been cooking professionally, and convinced my family that I could cook turkey dinner. That was probably the least successful dinner of my entire life and career because I came in all excited and we did green curry, turkey, squash stew, and we did all this food that was really exciting to me, and it bombed. It bombed miserably because a lot of what Thanksgiving is what Thanksgiving is to you. If this particular dish isn't on the menu, it's not really Thanksgiving. And that one horrible mistake Thanksgiving dinner I cooked way back when was loathed and despised, not because it was bad food, but because it wasn't Thanksgiving food. So I know people I love dearly for whom it's not Thanksgiving unless the ridge on the can from the jellied cranberry isn't still quivering on the plate. That's an important part. I love cranberry. I think cranberry is a fabulous flavor against the richness of the meal.
Yeah. I personally like it against the what I find to be dry on the white meat. The turkey, it's usually I if I'm not a fan of the white meat, I'll reach for more cranberry in case.
It'll fix a lot of things, as will gravy.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the prime example of a pan sauce. If you were making it out of a piece of duck and you were in France, it would be high gastronomy. Mom's turkey gravy is nothing but a beautiful pan sauce elevated, and it's delicious and
Yeah.
it's beautifully made.
Yeah, my wife isn't a fan of gravy, but I love gravy. All sorts of gravy, brown gravy, pan gravy,
What a
white
beautiful
gravy.
couple.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Split the plate right there.
Yeah, yeah. It happens a lot. So I guess just briefly run down how you come about making a gravy because you're just left with the pan drippings, right? Is that what you're?
Yeah. Well, I think it's fair to say that one of the potential drawbacks, because everything is a balancing act. If you brine a turkey, you run the risk of ruining the gravy because you're introducing a lot of salt
Right,
into
so
the
you have a
bird,
really salty.
and sometimes you get an overly salty pan dripping. But basically, you're taking the turkey out, and traditionally is a wonderful step. The neck, the wingtips, all the gizzards, and the stuff from the bag in the middle of the bird
Right.
comes out and cooks all day to make a turkey stock as a base. The turkey comes out of the roasting pan when it's done and rests because it needs to rest. The fat is poured off the top of the pan, and then the lovely souks, in French it's souks, the little bits that are stuck to the bottom of the pan, are dissolved with a little bit of wine and scrubbed up with a wooden spoon and dissolved. The turkey stock that you've made all day is poured in on top of it, and then that liquid is thickened with a roux, a fat and flour combination, or with a slurry, a cornstarch or arrowroot combination. Thickens the gravy up, and it's excellent cooking. It's fabulous technique. It's good gravy.
Yeah. And you use that gravy for just about everything. The turkey, the mashed potatoes, whatever. All-purpose gravy.
In my traditional family plate for my sister and my father, it's one of the three components on the plate. So yeah, and gravy just tastes good. It tastes good the next day. It's an important part of the turkey sandwich the next day.
Yeah.
So there we go. I love gravy.
And then going on to another side, another American tradition, because I realize that it's not very, you don't see it as common in other cultures as a casserole. Casseroles are pretty American, and I love me a green bean casserole. I think that always has a place on my plate for me.
I recently failed. I did a recipe for my family 2 nights ago. That I entitled "My Son Hates Green Bean Casserole," and I did everything I could to get that young man to like a green bean. And he liked everything around it, but he still didn't like green beans. I love a green bean casserole. I think I'll be honest. I love a green bean casserole made out of cream of mushroom soup.
Okay, I was going to ask, do you like to chef it up, or do you grab any of the Campbells to help you out?
I like both versions.
Yeah.
I don't think
I don't know how you can chef up a casserole very much besides using, fresh ingredients, right?
You make a beautiful bechamel sauce instead of using the cream of mushroom soup. You saute some chanterelle mushrooms because they're in season right now.
Okay.
You deep fry shallot rings to put over the top instead of the fried onions. You do fried shallot rings over the top. It's really easy to chef up.
Yeah.
And I like that version a lot. Give me a pound of chanterelles and I'm a happy man. So beautiful fresh wild mushrooms, green beans properly cooked, a nice bechamel, shallot rings on the top. But I like. Look, don't get me wrong. I love the cream of mushroom version a whole lot.
Yeah.
It's just a good thing.
And I think one thing that you just watching you describe and listening to you describe that process of chefing it up kind of takes away from what a casserole kind of is. You just pour things into a casserole dish and stick it in the oven is the method.
Nobody says the things you pour into a casserole dish have to be a certain kind of thing.
Yeah.
You can pour foie gras into a casserole dish and bake it. And I like both versions.
Yeah.
So.
What are there any other sides that you typically go for? We have corn, usually corn on the cob. My wife loves corn on the cob, so that's usually out there. We also have a platter of sorts that usually has an assortment of olives and pickles. I don't know if you have anything like that. Some deviled eggs.
All kinds of tradition. It's a feast, right?
Yeah.
So I think because our family tradition has it, the meal take place later in the day. Noshing or appetizers or hors d'oeuvres or whatever you want to call it throughout the course of the day, really important. There has to be just snacking food.
Yeah.
All day long. And I think it's kind of balanced nicely because leading up to the dinner, you have a bunch of really tasty traditional elements to a feast. So you get pickles and you get olives and those kind of elements leading into the feast. And then as important a part of the Thanksgiving tradition is the next day making a soup out of the carcass and making some sandwiches out of the leftovers. I mean, those two things kind of balance around the middle of the feast. It's really nice.
Yeah. Do you, I know your wife does focaccia. She makes a great focaccia. I don't know what kind of breads you usually make for Thanksgiving or if you buy breads.
We do. So my wife's family has a couple of traditional breads.
Right.
They have a basic white bread that has to be on the Thanksgiving table.
Yeah.
My wife makes a wonderful focaccia that we like having on the Thanksgiving table. I'm a bread fanatic.
Yeah.
So I like having those two breads. This year we're going to have cornbread stuffing as a third bread. There's going to be a fourth bread that will be a surprise. We've got all kinds of breads.
Surprise bread.
Surprise bread coming this year. So, yeah, lots of bread. I think it might get down to the heart of what the holiday is. We're breaking bread. That's
Right.
an important thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And yeah, that white bread that you're talking about, that family white bread, I think is great. It's a really dense bread, but nothing can hold a turkey better than that
right,
bread.
yeah, it's not wimpy.
Yeah.
It's hardly wonder.
Yeah.
It is dense and it is white. It's got a delicious crust,
Yeah.
and it's a classic white bread recipe.
Yeah.
It's really well done, and I don't know what the original source for the bread is, but I know that every member of my wife's family has that recipe and is able to make it. So it's a good thing.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked a little bit else. Are there any other sides that you typically have prepared, or that you like seeing on the table?
It is a time for Brussels sprouts in my family.
We are taping this a few weeks in advance. People who are friends of mine on Facebook saw I made Brussels sprouts for the first time today, which was exciting. But how like when I prepared it, it was just olive oil, salt, pepper, and I roasted it for 35 minutes or so. Toss it every now and then so that they don't burn. Is that how you typically do Brussels sprouts? Because a lot of people don't like Brussels sprouts. I don't know if it's because it's the strong, sharp greenness of Brussels sprouts from that flavor, or
So there's two things. For Thanksgiving, I never do. For Thanksgiving, I do halved or quartered and roasted because it's easy to do. The turkey comes out of the oven's hot. You throw the Brussels sprouts into a hot oven and roast them. It caramelizes them, but it leaves. So Brussels sprouts are a cruciferous vegetable, right? Their flowers are cross-shaped. So the whole family of vegetables are called cruciferous, and it includes all the cabbages and Brussels sprouts and broccoli. And they all have a pungency, right?
Right.
When you cook Brussels sprouts, when you cook cabbage, and that pungency comes from sulfur. These vegetables all have sulfur compounds in them. In the same way that an egg has sulfur compounds in it, the longer you cook a cruciferous vegetable, the stronger the sulfur bite becomes. So what many people don't like about Brussels sprouts is they are potently in your face, definite sulfuric bite. There's a bite to them. For Thanksgiving, I roast and caramelize, a little balsamic vinegar, and I love that. For friends who don't like Brussels sprouts, the solution to the problem of that sulfur attack is to cook the Brussels sprout as little as possible. You develop less sulfur flavors. So I actually won a bet this year. At a big party we had earlier this year, I convinced 3 lifetime haters of Brussels sprouts to love Brussels sprouts by peeling the leaves off the Brussels sprouts like they were little tiny heads of cabbage. I peeled them all down to Brussels sprout leaves. It took 15 seconds to cook in boiling water. Because it wasn't cooked, the sulfur compounds didn't develop, and you get a bright, green, fresh, interesting new vegetable by
interesting.
cooking it less.
Okay.
But the madness of peeling down a Brussels sprout is not part of my Thanksgiving tradition. So.
Yeah, if people who haven't never handled a Brussels sprout, it is like a cabbage, but the size of a golf ball, and so
Or smaller.
or smaller. And so that's a lot of layers you're going through. It's a very dense vegetable.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get past dinner a bit and let's dive into what a lot of people look for aside from the turkey is the desserts.
Yeah.
Classically, what I always love is the nice pecan pie. Pecan pie, wherever you're from, I say pecan. It's one of my favorite things to go for. Pecan pie, topped with maybe a little bit of whipped cream. It's amazing. It's one of my favorite things.
I love pecan pie. I have pronounced it both ways, depending on the audience I'm cooking for. It is a strict rule, depending on where you're from, how it is pronounced.
Yeah.
I think I'm heavily Texas influenced, and it's not a pecan.
Right.
It's a pecan.
Pecan.
I love pecan pie. I think pumpkin.
Pumpkin pie is also the other classic one. So
I like the flavor of pumpkin. I like pumpkin spices. I don't like it enough to have it in my coffee. That whole holiday tradition of overspicing things. But I love allspice, and I love nutmeg, and I love cinnamon. They're good spices, and I love them in.
And the funny thing about pumpkin pie is that you're not going for the pumpkin. It's the spice that the spice and the sugar that people really enjoy. The pumpkin is a squash, right? It's
Yeah.
gonna taste like a squash.
It's a pretty neutral base to elevate some holiday
Yeah.
seasonings. So
Yeah.
so I like takes on on pumpkin. Pecan. I'm a fan of mincemeat, but I almost never make it because either Thanksgiving or Christmas, I don't like to eat an entire pie by myself, and most people don't like mincemeat. So
I've never had a mincemeat pie. I don't. I've seen references to it, but I don't even know what mincemeat is. Is it just like, is it the offal of meat?
no,
Kinda? I know.
maybe. I mean, traditionally, there's a great European, especially British tradition of minced meat pies that are meat pies, and meat pies are a wonderful thing, but they're certainly not dessert.
Okay.
But minced meat pie has come to in America to be mostly ground dried fruits and spices.
Oh, what the hell call it that name then?
We have no control over our traditions. They are what they are, right? So maybe I'll make you mincemeat pie this year. See
Okay.
if I can hook somebody else on them, make it worth my while to
All
make
right,
them.
I'll give it a shot. Um, and then my mother-in-law makes a great eggnog jello. I'm a fan of that. I've never had it until like a couple years ago. She just started making it, I think, and it's been great. And my wife's aunt Susie, she makes an excellent buttercream pie, which is very similar to pumpkin pie, but with buttercream, and it's of course buttercream is delicious. So
So
it's
there you go.
it's a not a healthy treat, but it's a great one nonetheless.
You know, Thanksgiving, for all the overindulgence involved in the holiday, isn't that bad
Right.
a meal. It's a pretty good meal,
Yeah.
health-wise. You can
Especially
adapt it.
people reach for 50% proteins, right?
Yeah, it's a low
unless,
carb meal.
unless it's your family, it's
Yeah, well, the whole potato thing kind of eliminates the carb.
yeah.
I don't have the tradition of an eggnog jello because a very important tradition in our family is I was raised in a family that really believed in having a time for each holiday. One of the traditions I had growing up was any present you mentioned before Thanksgiving was over, you would not get. So my parents really put a limit on expanding Christmas away from December. You weren't allowed to talk about Christmas until after Thanksgiving. And one of the ramifications that I've kept going in my own family is our first eggnog is the day after Thanksgiving.
Oh wow.
And my wife and my son desperately love eggnog, but they don't have it until it's the time for it,
Ah.
and that starts the day after Thanksgiving.
That's a pretty good tradition. I want to go into a little bit. I don't know how many misconceptions there are, but there are a few misconceptions. One thing we covered a little briefly was a little bit about the stuffing dressing debate. The other one is tryptophan and turkey. A lot of people are under the understanding that the turkey has a lot of tryptophan, makes you all sleepy afterwards. I will say that's a pretty well debunked misconception because there's not enough tryptophan
Right,
where it should affect you. That it's more that you're eating 2 pounds of food.
right. It's those 2.5 pounds of mashed potatoes that you put away.
Yeah.
Tremendous amount of food makes you slip.
Yeah.
There's enough tryptophan to do that,
Yeah.
but you can blame it on whatever you want.
Right.
Go take your nap after you're done with the feast.
Yeah.
As long as you're not on dishes, that's fine with me.
And in my household, it's usually the person that cooks isn't doing the dishes. Is that pretty much the same with yours?
It has been the foundation for 21 years of a happy marriage.
Okay. I don't know if there's anything else you want to cover about Thanksgiving. I know there are a few other things we could have talked about, some of the historical aspects. One thing just right off the bat that comes off my head is that before turkey, it was a ham meal because a kind of refrigeration brought turkey into the forefront of being a Thanksgiving feast, but it used to be a ham-based.
Because ham was preserved meat, and
Yeah.
it didn't need refrigeration in order to keep. So,
Yeah, I'm not going to shy away from ham. I like ham, so a nice honey baked ham is really great. So
no reason. There's Christmas.
Yeah.
There's the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. There's all kinds of reasons for ham.
Yeah.
We come up with them if we need them.
Yeah.
One thing. Buy your turkey early. If you're not buying a fresh turkey, if you're buying a frozen turkey, which isn't quite as good but a lot less expensive, thaw it in the fridge. Don't thaw that turkey on the counter.
Yeah.
Um, it, it it's just not safe.
Yeah.
And so thaw
Thaw
it
it,
slowly in the fridge.
and probably within some sort of container to catch any juice that may drip out of it,
Exactly.
and then give it a nice brine. And we're looking size considering the size of the bird, you're looking for a healthy brine on that one.
Yeah. that. And then one last tip on brining: finish the brining the day before. So take it out of the brine on Wednesday and give it a full day under refrigeration, but not wrapped up, to dry out the skin. One of the secrets to making a beautiful golden brown skin is to have it be dry. If there's any moisture under the skin or on the skin when you put it in a hot oven, it turns to steam. We all know what happens to poultry skin when you steam it. It's not very pleasant.
Right.
So give it a day to dry out in the refrigerator. It's a very dry environment in the fridge. So dry it out and then no basting. No basting. I think it was Alton Brown. It might have been Harold McGee, his kind of predecessor,
Yeah.
his science predecessor in the food science art world. Every time you baste a turkey, you open the oven. Every
Yeah.
time you open the oven gets colder. It's got enough fat.
Yeah. And the other thing about basting is you're looking for a nice crispy skin. Why are you just covering it with more juice, right?
More juice isn't going to do it.
Yeah.
Fat does it.
Yeah.
Fat does it nicely. So that's
Yeah.
why I like putting butter under the skin. But yeah, no basting.
All right. Well, that does it for this episode. I've been Long Nguyen.
Mike Waller.
Right. And you can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/two cooks talking. That's the number 2, cooks talking. You can visit our website at twocookstalking.podbean.com. You'll see a list of our previous episodes and listen to those. And you can also email us at twocookstalking@gmail.com. Until next week, happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Enjoy your day.